Okay, looks like we are live, and we are going to be going through and we are going to be looking at some of these spreads for Underdog Fantasy like we do every single week. If you are new to the channel, we are going through and we are going to be looking at our $1,000 bankroll challenge. With this $1,000 bankroll challenge, I mean, so far, we've been able to be profitable every single week. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's going to be able to maintain through the course of the entire season. Because, of course, Underdog Fantasy here, they are paying me to get y'all to sign up. They are giving you a max deposit bonus when you sign up. So, I mean, if you can put 1 plus 2 together, 1 plus 2 equals 3, that kind of tells us that Underdog Fantasy, they are profitable. They are making money off these lines. So, Underdog Fantasy, probably in the long run, gonna be smarter than me. Probably in the long run, we may be losing here, but until then, we're going to continue to try to keep this hot streak alive. And just so y'all know I'm not lying to you whenever we're saying we've been profitable every single week, here are the results so far from this entire season. I'll actually, let's hide my little camera here. That way y'all can see the entire screen as we can scroll down. Y'all can go through, y'all can pause it, do the math on your own. If you want, you're going to see a lot of losses here. -10, -10, -20, -20. But the big thing is, you just need to hit a couple of these big ones every single week. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're setting parlays. We're getting correlation in the lineup. Like, you hit a couple of these 204s. This makes up for 10 bets that are losses. I mean, so here, 100, 300, 200, 120, 100. So that's really what we've been trying to accomplish, is just by getting the correlation in these ticket slips, knowing that, yeah, we're going to lose the majority of them. You can lose the majority of them as long as you hit on enough every single week. So yeah, let's get this going. Let me switch it back over to where we are actually going to be looking at these up-to-date lines. They actually put out some college football lines as well. For anybody who's interested in college football, I'm going to be staying away from that this week because, I have to be honest, I don't know nearly enough for us to be able to put our real money down. So yeah, let's go and let's get our first game up here. We're going to go game by game, because one thing that I think a lot of people make the mistake when they are betting on Underdog Fantasy is going through and saying, okay, well, I like this line from this game. I like the other line from the other game. No, you don't want to be going across games to be making your bets. That's something that we've actually failed with a considerable amount of times so far this season, unless we have our lock of the week. Like 2 weeks ago, that was Chuba Hubbard under -3.5 receptions. You also had, Miles Sanders, like at 82.5 total yards. We were smashing the under there, and we were just throwing those on every single bets. But mainly, we are trying to create that correlation in the lineup. Like, if we are going to be betting that Tua Tagovailoa gets over 230 passing yards here, if you're betting that over, then at the same time, if this hits, you have to assume that Waddle and Mike Gesicki, they are therefore more likely to hit their own respective overs. So we're not, of course, going to be just going and betting every over on the slate. Rather, instead, we need to be picking and choosing our spots. So I think if we're going to be looking at this from a macro sense with this Miami and Jacksonville game, with these London games, I just think that it's going to be so hard to accurately predict exactly what's going to happen. And I hate to just come out here and I hate to say, well, I'm an idiot. I don't know what's going on, so we're not going to be betting the game, because, obviously, you can have some projections going into a London game between Miami and Jacksonville. Neither team has a great defense. Here with Tua Tagovailoa coming back, you'd expect that Miami is most likely going to be leading the majority of this game. However, none of these lines really stand out to me that much. I guess you could be looking at the under for Trevor Lawrence at 243 passing yards. That is a line that would be just fine. You could also take the under on Marvin Jones, 60.5 receiving yards. If you were looking at Marvin Jones over the past few weeks, now keep in mind, yes, it's a small sample. Marvin Jones was actually dominant to start the season. He was crushing the 60-yard mark like every single week. He had 77, 55, 62. Over the past 2 weeks, he's had 24 and 25 yards. In plus matchups as well against the Bengals and the Titans. So you know what? Maybe this is a game where we want to be betting against the Jacksonville Jaguars. If any team's going to have a hard time traveling to London and just getting their preparation in, I'd imagine it's a team that really doesn't have leadership right now. I know that sounds stupid. I know we're not really talking about numbers there. I know we're kind of going off the rails, but still, I think that making the bet to go with Trevor Lawrence and and Marvin Jones both to hit their unders, it does make some sense. Now, if we were going to say that these are both going to hit their unders, I think that you would also want to be looking at the other side of the coin and say, well, maybe this is just a lower scoring game in general. Maybe you also have, Tua Tagovailoa hitting his own under. This Tua line, I'm neutral on. I'm going to say that I don't necessarily want y'all to be betting this under just to bet it. It's more so we're looking at this as a situation where we're just needing to create correlation, and we're already making a bet that Lawrence and Marvin Jones hit their unders. So if that's going to happen, you'd imagine that Miami's not pushing the pace of play. They have no Will Fuller. They have no Devontae Parker. So yeah, that's why we're going to be including the under of Tua Tagovailoa. And let's go through, and we're going to bet 20 to win 120. Like I said, we're most likely going to be losing the majority of these bets here. We just have to pick a few that are actually going to come through. Now, another line that I really want to point out is this Ja'Marr Chase 79.5 receiving yards. Now, I know Ja'Marr Chase, he has been dominant. I mean, Ja'Marr Chase has been fantastic, literally a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football. And if you're looking at this past week, he had 159 receiving yards. Still, I think that this is one of those lines that I'm 100% going to be attacking the under. I mean, you have T. Higgins 100% good to go in this game. So I think that we're probably going to be betting the under on Ja'Marr Chase, expecting that T. Higgins will increase his role. I think to have almost a 15, 16-yard difference here between Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase, it's a little aggressive for us. And then also this Joe Burrow line at 285 passing yards. I mean, here, I'm not necessarily a hater of this line or anything. I don't want to say that this is horribly priced, but if we're going to be identifying this Ja'Marr Chase under as a good bet, what's likely to happen with Burrow if Ja'Marr Chase hits his under? It's actually probably more likely that Joe Burrow hits his under at the same time. Now, going on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, I think instead of hitting their Amara St. Brown under or over, I mean, if you're looking at Amara St. Brown, this has been someone getting a considerable amount of volume over the past few weeks. He's had back-to-back weeks with 8 targets and also more receiving yards than this at 70 and 65. I think this is going to be a line that we're actually going to be looking to avoid. I mean, with Raymond here, this is also a wide receiver that has been seeing a surprising amount of volume. I mean, he's actually had 68 and 46 receiving yards over the past 2 weeks. So I think we are probably going to be avoiding both these numbers. Instead, Jared Goff. I know Goff has had some garbage time games where he's actually come out and they've been able to pass the ball effectively in the second half. And also, you should be able to see TJ Hawkinson be a little bit healthier in this contest. But still, this number at 257 yards, he's only gotten here twice so far this season. This past week capped out at 203. And also, if we're looking at Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase hitting their unders, like I said, we're building in the correlation here. We're going game by game. So what's most likely if both these players hit their under? This is a low-scoring game in general, so we're going to be going and betting the under with Jared Goff as well. We'll bet 20 to win 120 here. Now let's move on to our next bet. Now, if we're going to be looking at the Kansas City Chiefs and the Washington football team, if you're going to be looking at Washington, this is a team that is just decimated with injuries currently. Or, I mean, right now, I think if you're looking at this team with a banged up Terry McLaurin, you're looking at this team with no Curtis Samuel, no Logan Thomas, no Diami Brown. I mean, they almost have nobody to get the ball to. Now, with that being said, still, I mean, they have Taylor Heineke at almost 270 passing yards. This is given the matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this matchup against the Chiefs is probably the best one that you can have, where the Chiefs have been giving up like 36 points a game so far this season. If you're looking at what we actually had from Adam Humphries, this is a wide receiver that I definitely want to be checking out what the volume looked like last week, because I think that's going to be predictive of what we may see this one, just because, I mean, this is another very similar situation where it's a player that, I mean, has to see the snaps. He has to see the opportunity. It's an intriguing spot. I think we're probably going to be taking some of these overs. I don't love this Taylor Heineke number. I actually think this is probably about the right price to have, but it's more so I want to be betting the overs on Terry McLaurin. I want to be betting the over on Adam Humphries, and also Ricky Seals-Jones may be appealing at the same time. I hate to bet the over on every single one of these players here, because if that's going to actually hit, you are going to have a ton of production to this offense in general. But Ricky Seals-Jones did see 9 targets a week ago. He did not get to 42.5 receiving yards. I do only want to be picking 2 out of the 3 of these lines. We're also going to be taking the over on Taylor Heineke, of course, if we're going to be betting the overs on both of these players. Now, we're going to be going over and looking at what we have with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, with the Chiefs, do we just have to slam it with Tyreek Hill? I mean, Tyreek Hill at 86.5 receiving yards. I think this is actually the lowest number I have seen for Tyreek Hill so far this season. Now, keep in mind, he's been very volatile. He's actually only hit this number twice so far. Let me see what we've had with Travis Kelsey. Obviously, having them both at the same line, I would imagine that Kelsey is going to be a little more stable week to week, and the ceiling's not going to be high from a yardage standpoint, at least as high as what you're getting from someone like Tyreek Hill. Yeah, with Travis Kelsey, he's hit this mark twice as well, but he's hasn't just completely flattened out. Nicole Hardman, on the other hand, I don't think we can be looking at Nicole Hardman whenever we have Josh Gordon taking snaps in this offense. Not expecting a massive game from Gordon or anything, but if he's getting snaps, still I think you have to be a little bit wary of what you're going to be getting. I mean, Nicole Hardman did end up with 76 receiving yards this past week. I mean, he had 12 targets. So far, he's actually come close to beating this line 3 out of the 5 weeks. So we need to be betting the over on one of these games here. I think that if you're going to be looking at they just took the line off for Kelsey, so I'm assuming that maybe a lot of money went in on the over or the under, so that's not even available to us until they post that again later today. So I think what we're probably going to end up doing is we need to take an over on one of these wide receivers here. If we're looking at the numbers with what we've had so far this season, while I think you have to be a little bit worried with what we'll get from Nicole Hardman in Josh Gordon getting snaps, this past week with 12 targets, that's extremely encouraging. And also, maybe you just get some more usage without Clyde Edwards-Helaire here. So we're going to be betting 20. Like I said, this is a very unlikely to happen. We're essentially just betting that there's a full-on shootout against Kansas City. We're betting 20 to win 200, so that's going to be a 10x ticket. Now let's go to our next game, which will be the Minnesota Vikings against the Carolina Panthers. Tough matchup for Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook completely off the practice report. I mean, injury report. This is a player that's 100% good to go this week. I really want to be betting the over on Dalvin Cook. Keep in mind, yes, it's a little bit of a tougher spot to go through and just say it's guaranteed. I mean, they currently have him and Chuba Hubbard for the same amount of total yards this week. The problem is if we're betting the over for Dalvin, I'm going to have a hard time creating correlation in the rest of this ticket where, I mean, none of these other lines I'm not excited about. I think we're actually most likely just going to pass on this entire game. I think we're going to pass. Let's move on to the next one with the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. They have Jonathan Taylor in a matchup where I believe the Colts are 10.5-point favorites, or maybe they're 9.5. They're around that range. I mean, they actually have Jonathan Taylor for over 100 total yards. They have Brandon Cooks for about 70 receiving yards. I think that here, what we may want to just go through and bet is maybe we're going to be betting against the Houston Texans, betting that you have the Indianapolis Colts getting a large lead and being able to hold it. So I think we're probably going to take the under on Davis Mills, the under on Brandon Cooks. I know Davis Mills crushed this line a week ago against the New England Patriots, but still, I mean, the spread on this game is so large, and we may even want to take the over on Jonathan Taylor here. I know that this is a very aggressive line. I know we had a very long play this past week that maybe isn't necessarily predictive going forward, but yeah, I'm going to be taking the over on Jonathan Taylor, mainly given the matchup, also the talent he has. We're going to be betting 20 to win 120 here with this ticket. Now let's go to our next game. Our next game will be the Los Angeles Rams and the New York Giants. So we're going to be avoiding this entirely. And I hate to just say this because obviously it's kind of, I don't want to say lazy, but it's just kind of showing how my strategy is essentially just to continue to build in this correlation. I mean, it's like kind of like a cheat code, how Underdog Fantasy allows you to just string together those parlays with the same game. So if we're not going to have that many options for the New York Giants, you don't have that many options for the Giants right now in this game because there are currently a lot of injuries. We're probably going to be making some of these bets tomorrow morning. That's why if you look at our full-on ticket slip at the beginning of every video, I mean, we're making more bets than what we're just putting on these videos. Because the thing is, when we get more certainty about given players and their situations and with their injuries, then you have more lines available on Underdog Fantasy. So maybe tomorrow morning on the main live stream, I'll be going through and I'll be making some of these bets between the Rams and the Giants, but I want more options on the Giants side of the ball here. I don't want to be going through and just betting on Devontae Booker. There's really no fun with that. So let's move over to the Los Angeles Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens, where they currently have Eckler for over 100 total yards. I mean, here with Austin Eckler, of course, from a fantasy football standpoint, he has been elite, but the majority of that has actually been driven by his touchdown volume, where if you're looking at him so far this season, this is a player that actually has had 7 touchdowns through 5 weeks. If you're looking at yardage, I mean, he has come very close. Pretty much he's hit this mark almost every single week besides week 1. Yeah, if you're looking at this, he has literally gone with the over here every single week besides week 1. You just had a very impressive performance by Jonathan Taylor against the same defense. I actually have in fantasy football, keep in mind, a lot of that's touchdown upside and receptions out of the backfield, which doesn't necessarily matter here, but I have Eckler as my number 1 player in our running back rankings this week. We also have Mike Williams, not 100% good to play this game. So I think we're probably going to be taking the over on Austin Eckler here. I mean, back-to-back picks that we're taking the over for a running back to get over 100 total yards. I mean, that's not something that you're very excited about. Now, Lamar Jackson is actually crushing this mark every single week. I mean, if you're looking at Lamar Jackson, this is a player that the Ravens have essentially just completely abandoned the run. I think it's hard to assume that we're going to have this crazy of a rate of passing for Lamar Jackson going forward, but he has almost gotten here on passing volume alone every single week. And if you're adding in what we have seen from him with rushing, he got there week 1. He crushed it week 2. He got there week 3. He got there literally he has not had less than 320 total yards so far this season if you're including rushing, and that's what this prop is. So I think given the fact that he's literally 5 for 5 so far this year, maybe I'm missing something, but this should be a high-scoring game. We're probably going to be taking the over on Lamar Jackson. Now, Hollywood Brown obviously has a very high ceiling. You do have Rashad Bateman playing in this game, and Hollywood Brown in general, I think we want to be betting that there's going to be regression to this offense. But still, if you're looking at what we have had so far this season, I mean, he has gotten here 4 out of the 5 weeks so far. I believe Sammy Watkins is also potentially missing this week. So I think we're going to be taking the over on Hollywood Brown as well. I think we're just going to be betting that this game's higher scoring than a lot of people want to assume. So we're going to be taking the over on Eckler, Lamar, and Hollywood Brown. Yeah, I think those lines are just honestly very fair if you're looking at the production we've had. And we're just going to continue to throw $20 on it. We're going to bet 20 to win 120 here. Let's go to our next game. Our next game is going to be with the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. One of my favorite lines to take is the under on Khalil Herbert. I mean, this is very aggressive at 72.5 rushing yards. If that was total yards, I would most likely be staying away from that line. But to have that at rushing, I just think that is way too high. If you're going to be looking at what we have also had from Allen Robinson so far this season, I mean, with Allen Robinson here, he has hit this mark 1 week so far, barely by 5 yards. I think if we're betting the under on Herbert, we're just going to be betting that this entire offense kind of implodes here. So we're going to be also taking the under on Fields, the under on Robinson. And I really don't want to be taking the under on 4 players in a given offense because there has to be some level of production. So we're going to be avoiding Darnell Mooney, even though I would be fine if anybody wanted to take that Darnell Mooney under as well. Maybe we want to switch over from A-Rob to Mooney, but I actually think Darnell Mooney's probably been more productive so far this year with Justin Fields. Yeah, so Darnell Mooney's actually gotten to this twice so far this season. So I think, yeah, we're going to be taking the under on Robinson instead. And if we're going to go over here, if we're going to be looking at the Green Bay Packers, I think we honestly may have to take the over on Davante Adams. I think that if you're going to be looking at it in general, it's probably not a good idea to be going through and betting the unders on one given side, then be betting an over on a wide receiver all of a sudden, because you would want this game to be, I mean, at least competitive if you're going to be betting the over on a wide receiver. But the thing is with Davante Adams here, he's literally seeing 40% of his team's targets. He has gotten to 100 receiving yards 3 out of 5 weeks so far this season. He just coming off a week where he had 16 targets. He's had 61 targets through 5 games. So yeah, he's also the thumbnail of the video. So we're going to be betting the over on Davante Adams. We're going to be betting 20 to win 200 here. Okay, so let's get that going. Let's scroll back down. Let's look at what we have with the Arizona Cardinals and the Cleveland Browns. They have, oh my gosh, I love to see it. They have Kareem Hunt for over 110 total yards. They currently have Kareem Hunt for the highest yardage mark of the entire slate. Oh my gosh, I love to see it. Y'all know how much of a fan I've been of Kareem Hunt for a long time now. And at the same time, I mean, we were calling Kareem Hunt a top 5 fantasy running back if anything happened to Nick Chubb. Looks like Underdog is agreeing with us. I mean, they have Kareem Hunt at half a rushing touchdown here. I think we're probably going to be staying away from these Kareem Hunt lines, if we're going to be honest. I mean, if this was a total touchdown, I would 100% be taking, I'm sorry, if this was just 0.5 total touchdowns, I would 100% be taking the over. But to have that at 0.5, just rushing touchdowns in general, I think that's probably a spot we're wanting to avoid. I think we're going to also want to avoid the Arizona Cardinals side of this, just because, I mean, you're looking at the Cardinals saying, okay, well, no Cliff Kingsbury. How exactly are we going to know what this offense is going to do? So we're probably going to be avoiding this entire game. I really want to see Kareem Hunt, but they already have him priced so aggressively. I don't necessarily think there's much room for profit. Now, our next game, I do not love the line for Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, 247 passing yards. Going to be something I want to avoid more times than not. But the thing is, this Courtland Sutton at 64.5 receiving yards with no Jerry Jeudy, no KJ Hamler, this is a line that I definitely think we need to be attacking. If you're looking at the air yards he has had in Denver so far, as well as just the amount of targets he is getting on a per game basis, over the past 4 weeks, you've actually had 36 targets for Courtland Sutton. So he's averaging 9 targets a game. Over the past 4 weeks, he's had over 100 yards twice, and that's without Jerry Jeudy. This past week, I mean, including the games where you've had KJ Hamler injured as well, you've had 19 targets over the past 2 weeks for Courtland Sutton. This is someone that's essentially averaging 10 targets a game. I think that we probably want to be taking the over on Courtland Sutton here. If you're looking at Tim Patrick, keep in mind this is 100% someone you have to be a little bit more excited about whenever you have the injuries to the other players in this offense. I mean, with Tim Patrick, he's actually gone over 52.5 receiving yards as well 2 times so far this season. The target volume isn't nearly what it is with Courtland Sutton, so I'm going to be taking Sutton here. If we're looking at Teddy Bridgewater, I know Teddy Bridgewater's been decent so far this season. I think that without Jerry Jeudy, especially with no KJ Hamler was a field-stretching wide receiver that was just increasing the overall efficiency of this offense. I think you have to lower your expectations. I mean, the Raiders, not a matchup that we have to be too worried about. I think we're probably just going to be taking the over on Teddy Bridgewater, not because I love this number on Teddy Bridgewater, but like we said, we're building in correlation here. We like the number on Courtland Sutton. So if Sutton hits his over, what is more likely to happen? Let me also check in on Noah Fant really quick just to see if we can try to slip him in here. Let's see what kind of target volume we've had from Noah Fant over the past few weeks. He's averaged 7 targets a game over the past 2 weeks. He hasn't gotten to 46 receiving yards, really 46.5 receiving yards since week 1. So that will be a spot that we're probably trying to avoid. Hunter Renfrow at 52.5 receiving yards. I know this is a wide receiver that's been seeing a considerable amount of volume, but his average depth of target is so damn low that, I mean, how many targets is he needing to actually hit 52.5 receiving yards? I mean, he's gotten there 4 out of the 5 weeks so far this season. I may just have to walk this statement back. He's gotten there 4 out of the 5 weeks. The 1 week where he did not get there was a week where he actually had 45 receiving yards, so he was only 7 off. I think we're probably actually going to be taking the over on Hunter Renfrow here, because if we're going to be looking at Renfrow, let me pause for a second, because at the same time, we have to acknowledge that you've had multiple overtime periods for the Las Vegas Raiders here. So assuming that this game ends in regulation, maybe you're not as excited. With Bryan Edwards, he's trailed off just slightly. He got there in week 1, week 2, week 3, but in the past 2 weeks, he's really not been used at all. And you've seen the bump up in usage from Hunter Renfrow. Henry Ruggs, obviously more of a boom bust wide receiver. I think he either just doesn't get there or he crushes this line by 50 points. But Henry Ruggs has actually gotten here pretty much every single week. There's 1 week that he didn't, and it was by half a yard. I think that when we're getting the discount compared to Hunter Renfrow, we're probably going to be taking the over on Henry Ruggs. I honestly like Henry Ruggs more as the receiver himself. Now we're going to be looking at Darren Waller. This is also a tight end that if you're looking at the targets per game, the opportunity is definitely there. He's averaging essentially 10 targets a game. But, I mean, the yardage hasn't been. He's actually missed 63.5 receiving yards 3 weeks in a row now. So I think we're going to be taking the over on Ruggs, mainly not because I love this number in particular, but it's because we really want to get this Courtland Sutton bet in here. And if Courtland Sutton's going to hit, what else is likely to hit in that scenario? In that scenario, if Courtland Sutton hits his over, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater would, and this game's going to have to be competitive overall. So let's bet both those overs at the same time. Let's go bet $20 down to win $120. And let's move down to our next game. Our next game here will be the Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots. Okay, so they have currently Jacoby Myers for 62.5 receiving yards. Now, you have Trayvon Diggs as a game-time decision in this game. That is 100% going to be making an impact. They have Dalton Schultz for 44.5 receiving yards. I will say that if you were going to be taking any of the overs here on the Dallas Cowboys wide receivers, you need to be taking the over on Dak Prescott as well, because if you're going to get Lamb for over 72.5 receiving yards, or Amari for over 65, or Schultz over 45, I think that Dak here would most likely hit his over as well. I think this game is actually probably going to be a stay-away game from us. I've had a difficult time evaluating what we are going to get in these New England Patriots contests so far this season. So I'm just going to be honest. This is going to be a weak spot. We don't have to make a bet on every single game. Of course, this is America. So I think we're going to be able to just pass on this game as the last game of the slate. But of course, I really hope y'all enjoyed this live stream. Go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. I will grab y'all the link in the live chat. It's also going to be in the comment section. Go use promo code FLOCK. Get your max deposit bonus. Get daily additional entries to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. Support the channel at the same time. And I think that could be it. I'll leave a comment down there with the link. And yeah, subscribe to the channel. Drop that like. And I hope to see you on the live stream tonight.